Why Politicians, Diplomats, and Lawyers Are Professional Liars, 20th of June, 2025. Introduction. What if humanity could no longer lie? Imagine a sudden, irreversible change in human nature, the complete inability to lie. No false claims. No strategic silence. No diplomatic double-speak. What industry would collapse first? Advertising and public relations might suffer. Religious institutions could be shaken. But at the core, the professions most dependent on calibrated deception, politics, diplomacy, and law, would disintegrate almost overnight. Because these are not just fields where lying happens, they are disciplines where truth is constantly bent, withheld, or spun to suit purpose. Deceit in these domains is not incidental, it is structural. This article examines the cultural, historical, philosophical, and institutional reasons why politicians, diplomats, and lawyers are professional liars, not necessarily because they are immoral individuals, but because their very professions demand a sophisticated dance with the truth. Politics, the performance of power. The voter doesn't want the truth. Political scientist Murray Edelman once wrote, "Political language is political reality. Politicians craft narratives not to reflect truth, but to generate consent." A successful political career often requires the candidate to appear decisive, moral, relatable, and patriotic, regardless of personal views or empirical facts. A politician who admits the limits of government power, the impossibility of delivering everything to everyone, or the true cost of popular policies will likely lose elections. Hence, politicians lie, not simply to manipulate, but to survive. The lie as governance. Lying in politics is not new. In The Prince, Machiavelli advised rulers that deceit, if used skillfully, is a legitimate instrument of governance. In modern democracies, politicians may not always lie outright, but they practice strategic misrepresentation, offering overly optimistic budget forecasts, downplaying failures, exaggerating threats, or omitting inconvenient truths. During the lead-up to the 2003 Iraq War, for example, the US and UK governments made intelligence claims about weapons of mass destruction that were later found to be exaggerated or false. These deceptions shaped public opinion and justified military action, a classic case of professional lying with global consequences. Propaganda and spin. Contemporary political lying has evolved into a refined art form, spin. Words are chosen to frame narratives in ways that obscure meaning. Austerity becomes fiscal discipline. Mass surveillance is national security. George Orwell foresaw this in Politics and the English Language, warning how language could be manipulated to defend the indefensible. Diplomacy, truth beneath a veil. Diplomacy's double tongue. Where politics lies for power, diplomacy lies for peace. The diplomatic profession thrives on ambiguity. Treaties are often written in language flexible enough to allow both parties to claim victory. Press statements are crafted with more subtext than substance. Denials are issued with full knowledge of the truth, and yet are accepted by the global order. Henry Kissinger famously remarked, "The reason we have diplomats is to lie for their country." So, said partly in jest, the statement captures a hard truth. Candor in diplomacy can escalate conflicts, while ambiguity keeps options open and tempers calm. Historical precedents. During the Cold War, secret back channels, disinformation campaigns, and plausible deniability were standard tools of diplomatic engagement. For example, the Cuban Missile Crisis was resolved through secret negotiations and public face-saving statements that intentionally obscured the terms of the agreement. The Soviets agreed to remove missiles from Cuba, while the US secretly agreed to withdraw missiles from Turkey, a fact kept quiet to maintain geopolitical appearances. Constructive ambiguity. Modern diplomacy often leans on what is called constructive ambiguity, language so vague that it allows opposing parties to interpret agreements in their favor. The 1993 Oslo Accords between Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization contained numerous ambiguous provisions, allowing both sides to claim progress while leaving core issues unresolved. The result? Temporary stability, at the cost of long-term clarity. Law. A structured battle with truth, the adversarial illusion. In the legal profession, truth is not the primary objective. Victory is. The adversarial legal system is built on the assumption that the competition between opposing lawyers will produce justice. But in practice, it often becomes a contest of rhetorical skill, procedural maneuvering, and selective storytelling. As the British legal theorist Jeremy Bentham once observed, lawyers are the only persons in whom ignorance of the law is not punished. Instead, they are celebrated for finding loopholes, technicalities, and precedents that can bend reality in favor of their clients. Withholding and obscuring lawyers are not ethically obliged to disclose all facts, only those that cannot be lawfully suppressed. A lawyer may know their client is guilty, but can exploit reasonable doubt, question witness credibility, or use exclusionary rules to suppress damaging evidence. These tactics do not amount to perjury, but they are sophisticated forms of legal deception. Justice versus truth. Judicial systems aspire to fairness, not necessarily to truth. As U.S. Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia once noted, the law is not a brooding omnipresence in the sky. It is a human construction, full of compromises, contradictions, and calculated omissions. Truth in court is a product of adversarial choreography, not absolute revelation. Ethical justifications. Do the ends justify the means? Defenders of professional lying in these fields make familiar arguments. Politicians lie to preserve stability and inspire hope. Diplomats lie to prevent war and maintain international order. Lawyers lie, within the rules, to ensure every citizen receives a fair defense. These rationalizations rely on consequentialism, the ethical theory that morality depends on outcomes. The lie is justified if it leads to peace, justice, or democratic legitimacy. But this raises a deeper ethical tension. How much deception is tolerable before institutions lose their moral legitimacy altogether? As philosopher Cicely Bach wrote in her seminal work, Lying, Moral Choice in Public and Private Life, 1978, trust and integrity are precious resources. They can be destroyed by too many lies, even lies told in good faith. When truth is dangerous. Why is lying so embedded in these professions? Perhaps because raw truth, undiluted and unvarnished, is often too dangerous. Telling the public an economic collapse is imminent could cause panic. Revealing classified diplomatic maneuvers could start wars. Admitting guilt in a courtroom without due process undermines legal protections. In this view, lies serve as social lubricants. They prevent disruption, preserve order, and maintain confidence. But such a perspective is deeply cynical and ultimately corrosive. A society that normalizes professional lying risks losing its ability to distinguish truth from propaganda, justice from procedure, or diplomacy from deceit. The consequences of truthlessness. In an era of mass misinformation, institutional lying creates a vacuum that conspiracy theories eagerly fill. When governments lie about war, people stop trusting them about vaccines. When lawyers win by obfuscation, citizens lose faith in justice. When diplomacy masks atrocities, international law becomes meaningless. This erosion of trust is not theoretical. We see its effects in declining voter turnout, polarized electorates, populist backlashes, and cynicism toward democratic institutions. Once lost, trust is difficult, if not impossible, to recover.
Conclusion. Truth.
Power and the price of lying. If lying were suddenly impossible, politics would become suicidal, diplomacy inert, and the legal profession paralyzed. That such professions rely so heavily on deception is a reflection of the systems we've built, systems that prioritize image over substance, process over justice, and order over truth. It is not enough to expect individual honesty from politicians, diplomats, or lawyers. We must interrogate the institutional incentives that reward dishonesty, because at some point, professional lying, however rationalized, ceases to be functional and becomes existentially dangerous. The question is no longer why they lie. The real question is, how long can we afford to let them? A heartfelt light. To every soul whose hand did give, you've helped me dream, helped me live. In darkest hours your light came through, with hearts so kind, so pure, so true. Your gifts, like stars in deepest night, have steered me gently toward the light. Each coin, each word, each silent prayer, a thread of hope so rich, so rare. My eyes once dimmed now seek the skies, and slowly clearer visions rise. Because of you, I dare to see the world again, its grace, its plea. Your compassion's flame will not just stay with me alone. It lights the way for others wandering through despair to feel the warmth of selfless care. You've shown what love in action means, in quiet ways through giving scenes. You've built a bridge from soul to soul and made the broken feel more whole. So let this thanks rise like a song, a melody both soft and strong. May your example gently call more hearts to rise to give. To fall into the joy of lifting pain, of planting hope where none remains. Your kindness walks beside me still, a light, a love, a living will.
Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to show your support.